Iro Radio. This is The Big Lead.
In many ways, I feel like today is going to be the most important show that we have done in a long, long time, because it's time for us to demand that Jay Inslee cease and desist with these outrageous emergency powers. Let me explain. We're coming to you from the Carter Subaru studio. Welcome to the big show, and let's get right into The Big Lead.
The Big Lead. Top story.
Let's go back more than 2 years. On February 29th, 2020, Jay Inslee issued Proclamation 2005, which proclaimed a state of emergency for all counties in Washington state as a result of the coronavirus disease and confirmed person-to-person spread of COVID-19 in Washington state. February 29th, 2020. Then let's go forward nearly 2 years. August 9th, nearly 1 year, excuse me. August 9th, 2021. Jay Inslee Proclamation 21-14. I, Jay Inslee, Governor of the State of Washington, as a result of the above-noted situation, meaning the coronavirus, do hereby proclaim an order that a state of emergency continues to exist in all counties of Washington state to help preserve and maintain life, health, property, or the public peace. Okay, you got that? So that's why Jay Inslee declared and renewed the state of emergency in Washington. It was because coronavirus was very deadly. It was because he had to do it to protect the public peace. But something amazing has happened in the 9 months since then. Jay Inslee, even though coronavirus is no longer as grave a public health threat as he claimed it once was, Jay Inslee is still holding on to those emergency powers. So why? Why is he holding on to all of these emergency powers? It's a question that absolutely must be asked. Now, yesterday, he talked to Channel 4. It's at comonews.com. And he told Keith Eldridge the reason he is still using those emergency powers.
How long are you going to keep the emergency powers going? Because federal dollars are at stake. Or do you foresee any potential of having to reinstitute any kind of policies to go back because COVID's kind of making a turn?
But as we've said now for 2 years, we'll continue to make decisions that are going to keep people safe. We're doing that, and we want to make sure that federal money keeps coming. So it's important to keep this in place right now.
So federal money will keep coming, he said. Now, is that the reason for emergency powers? Because that's not what he told us at first. He said that it was all about keeping the public safe. And now it's about keeping the money flowing from the feds? Well, how have all other states, except for 2 now, Oregon abandoned its emergency powers yesterday. How is it that all of the other states have given up gubernatorial emergency powers, but Jay Inslee is holding on to his? And this is where we better, as a people, and I'm going to challenge everybody in the media who has given Jay Inslee an absolute free pass on all of this. I mean, let's go back more than a year when Jay Inslee talked about the necessity for emergency powers.
Look, this is a pandemic. It is killing people. And we have a community response, and only a community response can be successful. So we have to act together. And that's what we're doing.
Wait, he has emergency powers because this was killing people. And he said it was to save families.
Simply a response to a very, very deadly disease. And there's nothing in the Constitution that says we should surrender our loved ones to a virus. There's just nothing that says that.
Your loved ones will die, he said. if Jay Inslee didn't have emergency powers. But now, yesterday, listen again.
How long are you going to keep the emergency powers going? Because federal dollars are at stake. Or do you foresee any potential of having to reinstitute any kind of policies to go back because COVID's kind of making a turn?
But as we've said now for 2 years, we'll continue to make decisions that are going to keep people safe. We're doing that, and we want to make sure that federal money keeps coming. So it's important to keep this in place right now.
Well, that is a dramatic change. He told us that it was to save lives, that family members will die if he doesn't have emergency powers. And now it has changed dramatically. And now it's because he wants some federal dollars? That is not a valid reason for emergency powers. And so let's talk about what this could be about here. And this is where you better challenge every other media outlet to start covering this the way that we are on this show, because this is some really scary stuff. And I'm not, when they had that, they're going to round up unvaxxed people and put them in a concentration camp. It was our show that debunked that. So I'm not pushing conspiracy theories. I'm just telling you what you better be keenly aware of right here. When he first said it was to save lives, and now he says it's all about federal dollars. So think of first of all, our state, according to the Maine Policy Institute, Washington has some of the scariest emergency powers of any state in the union. We are one of the 4 worst states in the country. Only the governor can declare emergency, a state of emergency, and only the government can terminate a state of emergency. And under a state of emergency, the governor can suspend any law or regulation related to the emergency. Well, let's talk about what Jay Inslee has done with that. He can suspend any law or regulation related to the emergency. Well, he told us that he had to destroy Spiffy's Restaurant Chehalis and Bob the Barber up in Snohomish. He had to destroy Billy's Cafe up in Burlington because they weren't following his rules, his arbitrary rules that had nothing to do with public safety. But now all of a sudden, Jay Inslee, under his emergency powers, was able to not pass laws, but to issue declarations that have destroyed some businesses in this state. The Article 1, Section 1 of the Washington State Constitution says that all political power is inherent in the people, and the government is established to protect and maintain individual rights. Well, Jay Inslee has completely violated Section 1, Article 1 of the state constitution. He's not about protecting individual rights. His emergency power is specifically designed to take away individual rights. If you don't inject this untested vaccine that certainly isn't coming close to living up to what the pharmaceutical companies and Jay Inslee vowed it would, still worthwhile for some of us. But if you don't inject this, I'll take away your livelihood. So no longer was he about protecting individual rights, which is the primary purpose of government, according to our state constitution. Section 3 of the Washington State Constitution. No person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. But Jay Inslee, he stole private property from landlords all across the state. Why? Because it was an emergency.
This is really hard on people. It's hard on small business people. It's hard on people who are going to be out of work because of this. So we need to do some more to support these families. So we are extending our statewide eviction moratorium. This is meant to protect renters from falling into homelessness if they're struggling. So if you can pay rent, obviously we need you to pay rent. This is for the folks who are really in tough times.
No, it wasn't. It was for a bunch of scam artists. I mean, there were some people in tough times who benefited from that, but there were an awful lot of scam artists who were working and just choosing to not pay their rent because you, Jay Inslee, violated Section 3 of the Washington State Constitution that says no person shall be deprived of property without due process. You stole the property of landlords all across the state in the name of an emergency. He didn't allow us to go to church. He told us that was suspended. The First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, Section 4 of the state Constitution, right of petition and assemblage. Jay Inslee said, nope, you can't go to church. Too dangerous for me to let you go to church. So again, why is he keeping emergency powers? Well, we do have an election coming up where Democrats are expected to get destroyed across the country, and the tsunami could even impact Washington. Republicans could take over one or both chambers of our state legislature down in Olympia. And then what happens? Well, Jay Inslee will lose the absolute unchecked control he has over our money to pursue his bogus climate change agenda. And we've already seen the Democratic Party steal one gubernatorial election in Washington in 2004. There is absolutely no question that when Dino Rossi won the initial count, he won the first recount, he won the second recount, and then the Democrats found a bunch of ballots under the fridge at King County elections, and voila, Chris Gregoire is the governor. They stole that election. And every postmortem of that election has absolutely confirmed, in my view, that that election was stolen. There's simply no question about it. I talked to Elizabeth Hovde from the Washington Policy Center about how Jay Inslee's using these extra constitutional powers to just not follow the law.
How long are you going to keep the emergency power?
Here she is. Yeah. We better all be wary about politicians who take actions so that they don't have to follow our guiding documents.
Absolutely. You know, and even if the lawmakers in our legislature, which are dominated by his party, the governor's party, even if they go along with him and agree with many of these things and the vaccine mandate that I've been writing about in particular, you would at least have concerns raised and people represented by their lawmakers. Yep. That's how this is supposed to work. It's supposed to be a debate, it's supposed to be a discussion, and we're having none of that. This is one-man rule, and it's inappropriate and weird.
Okay, it is weird. So this is the essential violation of what our government is supposed to be. At the federal level, we have a separation of powers, and our state constitution was very much crafted after the U.S. Constitution. It is designed so that one person never has too much power. We're supposed to have separate but equal branches of government. But now Jay Inslee has tyrannical power. And I want to stress for you why this is such an important issue. In the Federalist Papers, John Adams, James Madison, they wrote that unchecked power in any one individual inevitably leads to tyranny. Let me read to you from the Federalist Papers. In order to lay a due foundation for that separate and distinct exercise of the different powers of government is essential to the preservation of liberty. What is the government itself but the greatest of all reflections on human nature? If men were angels, no government would be necessary. If angels were to govern men, neither external nor internal controls on government would be necessary. In framing a government which is to be administered by men, over men, the great difficulty lies in this. You must first enable the government to control the governed, and in the next place, oblige it to control itself. Well, that's what our constitutions are about. So government can control itself and to ensure the rights and freedom of we the people. But then back to the Federalist Papers. In a society under the forms of which the stronger faction can readily unite and oppress the weaker, Anarchy may as truly be said to reign as in a state of nature, where the weaker individual is not secured against the violence of the stronger. That is why we have a separation of powers. Jay Inslee should not be able to destroy a 50-year restaurant in Chehalis, or a cafe in Burlington, or a barber in Snohomish, because now you have the stronger violent against the weaker in our society. What I find ironic about this, I'm going to talk about this with my next guest too, is for 4 years I heard people on the left scream about Donald Trump's a tyrant, Donald Trump he's an anarchist, he's whatever they wanted to throw out. And once again, their party is all of those things times a million, because Jay Inslee has unchecked powers. He prevented us from going to church. He closed down restaurants. He forced people. You want to keep your job? You have to inject a vaccine that's relatively untested. Vaccine will save lives. Well, vaccine doesn't prevent transmission or contraction, apparently, of the disease. That's not a knock on the vaccine. I got it. It's good for people my age. But he's forcing children, trying to force. They're still trying to force children as young as 5 years old to inject something in their body, whether mom and dad want it or not, with absolutely zero public health rationale for doing so. Jay Inslee's party has stolen a statewide election in 2004. They're scared to death about what's going to happen this November. And Jay Inslee is holding on to his emergency powers. He told us at first it was to save lives. Now he says it's for federal funds. What's he going to tell us next? And when is everybody else in the media going to start giving some scrutiny to the most out-of-control governor in the United States of America? And that is your big lead for today.
The Big Lead on Cairo Radio.
I'm going to continue with our big lead.